again. Welcome to everyone to the first presentation in the 2021 on Pettaquamscutt presentations on the environment and the history of the Narrow River watershed. My name is Rosemary Smith. My husband David and I are facilitators for the On Pettaquamscutt Winter Speaker Series. This is our 10th season. Next slide, please, David. So we have a spectacular lineup for this year. Today's presentation is Coastal Defenses in Narragansett, presented by David Smith, and he is sponsored by the Friends of Canonchet Farm. February 28th, Heather Pouliot Kisilywicz will present stories of the South County fishermen, and she is being sponsored by South County Museum. On March 28th, Craig Wood of the Narrow River Preservation Association will be talking on the ospreys of Narrow River. Today starts the registration at the Narragansett Library for our February 28th presentation. So it opens up today. And I'd suggest that you do it as soon as you can. All of this information that's in front of you right now is available at the onpettaquamscutt.org, along with some of the past presentations. This presentation is being recorded and will be available soon through the library and at the onpettaquamscutt.org website. David and I are both proud members and volunteers for the Friends of Canonchet Farm, the Narrow River Preservation Association, and the South County Museum, and are card-carrying members and supporters of the Maury Lutyens Memorial Library in Narragansett. Each of these organizations sponsors many educational events during the spring, summer, and fall. The On Pettaquamscutt series fulfills the winter need of sharing information about our beautiful watershed. For the last 9 years, we have offered 3 presentations per year during the winter months, and they have been all well attended. This project is a collaboration between the Friends of Canonchet Farm, Narrow River Preservation Association, and the South County Museum, working toward the goal of educating the community about the Narrow River watershed, which encompasses portions of Narragansett, North Kingstown, and South Kingstown, Rhode Island. Each organization is asked to offer a speaker. This year, our series will be conducted via Zoom, as we are unable to meet in one location. 100 people have signed up today, with an equal number on a waiting list. So we thank the trustees and the staff of the Maury Lutyens Memorial Library who agreed to host the Zoom, and especially our superstar liaison, Marilyn Sherman. Next slide. Financial support is provided by Trio Restaurant, which is giving each of the presenters a generous gift certificate to the Newport Restaurant Group. We encourage you to dine in or take out at Trio. We need to keep our local businesses going during these difficult times. So let's hear from our partners. Our first presenter will be Tom Hoagland, who's the new president of the Friends of Canonchet Farm. Tom, what's new at Canonchet Farm?
Oh, thank you, Rosemary. And it's always great to be here. I've attended most of these myself, and I always look forward to them. So, like every other organization, we've been hampered somewhat by COVID, and a lot of our activities are on hold until the pandemic eases. And then the weather has not been kind to our outside work on the trail either. But there have been a couple of things that have been going on, especially in the cooperative area. We, the Friends of Canonchet volunteers, in association with the South County Museum, spent a long weekend and a couple of days after that redoing the landscaping around the South County Museum, taking out invasive shrubs and replacing them with natives, and revamping and replanting the native plant garden.
And I don't know how to put it on the TV.
And so that is, of course, sleeping through the winter, but it should be very exciting to see the
Oops.
big initiative we've been involved with has been to publish a 13-page full-color invasives booklet that details and highlights 13 of the most pervasive invasive home yards. And we are that's currently at the printer in South County, trying to get it be made available at various locations like the library, town hall, things like that. So that'll be something to look forward to. We're very excited by this. That also is a joint venture. The original was put together by the Taylor Point Restoration Association over in Jamestown. So we have revised and re-edited that were bad here that weren't so bad.
Somebody must have just come on.
Okay, I don't know this. Ellen, could you mute yourself, please? Thank you.
So you have to mute it because they can hear me.
That's right. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, appreciate
She
it.
just came on and she didn't have it muted. So it was interrupting.
Yeah.
See up here?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Ellen, you need to mute again.
Wait a minute.
Okay, so Tom, I think is concluded his presentation. Sounds like there's lots of interesting things happening at Canonchet Farm, and I'm looking forward to seeing that booklet that they co-produced with Taylor Point Restoration. Veronica Berounsky is next. She's the Vice President of the Narrow River Preservation Association. What's new on the river, Veronica?
Oh, hey, Rosemary, can you hear me fine?
We can hear you. You're good.
Okay, great. Yeah, first I want to say congratulations on 10 years, starting the 10th year of this series.
Thank you.
It's been a wonderful series. And of course, and I remember talking with you, Rosemary, when you were, this was just a glimmer in your eye with David. And having a conversation about, we should have some talks about Narrow River in the winter. And then you twisted my arm to actually give the first talk, which I can't believe it's been 10 years. Well, wonderful. Thank you for all your dedication for 10 years of this.
Thank you.
So Narrow River,
Yes.
our mission is to preserve, protect, and restore the natural environment and the quality of life of all communities within the Narrow River, also known as the Pettaquamscutt Estuary and its watershed. And we've been working towards this mission since our founding in 1970. So with this year, 2021, we're starting our 51st year. So up for the next 50. I just got a couple of things I want to point out. Of course, everything is virtual. One is that on March 28th, the March talk, and on Pettaquamscutt will be Craig Wood talking about the ospreys of Narrow River with some footage from our osprey cam. Second is related to that osprey cam. If you're familiar with that, and it's on narrowriver.org, it's running 24/7 all year round. So even though the ospreys have gone for the season, the cam is still there, so you can go look at it. It's positioned great for looking at sunrises. So if you want to go see a sunrise without getting cold, there's the way to look at it. Also, you never know what's going on in the river, so take a look, and you can look at it from anywhere around the globe. Third, related to that osprey cam, Craig Wood and Allison Cates put together a video of highlights of the year, the season of the ospreys, the osprey family. And that was selected as one of the participants for the Rhode Island Nature Video Fest, which is co-sponsored by the Rhode Island Natural History Survey and the Environmental Council of Rhode Island. So that is a free festival. It's on February 20th at 2 p.m. and it runs for an hour. You can see all the videos, including the one about the osprey cam. And then afterwards, that video from our osprey cam footage will be on the narrowriver.org website for everybody to see. And finally, I just want to make perhaps a plug for our new book about Near River that was done by a board member, Barry Devine. It's got everything you want to know about Near River, past, present, and future. And the book sales for that are available on our website, nearriver.org. So everything's going to be virtual for a while, but between videos and books, there's a lot you can learn about Near River right from the comfort of your home. Thanks.
Thank you, Veronica. Lots going on. I'm looking forward to seeing Craig's presentation in March. Our next person who will be speaking is Heather Kisilywicz, who is the new executive director at the South County Museum. Heather, what's going on at the museum?
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for inviting me, Rosemary and David. Although usually I would talk hours and hours on genealogy, today we're going to focus on something different, and I can't wait to learn more. I haven't had the chance to attend this before, so I'm really looking forward to it. For those of you who know South County Museum, please come visit. We are open to the public every Friday and Saturday from 10 to 4. And with COVID, it's one of those things people are longing to do, get out and walk the trails. Those trails are now designated through the hard work of the Canonchet, Friends of Canonchet, as an actual homegrown national park. So it is a wonderful way to spend a Friday or Saturday, including on Saturdays. We will be having the blacksmith forge running, and we have a new winter exhibit coming together called Ice. You'll be able to see and experience the history of iced harvesting in southern Rhode Island, as well as ice skating, sledding, because as you know, in our carriage barn, we have multiple horse-drawn vehicles, including Santa's sled. And we'll also cover, did you know that the first rescue sled for ice, someone who's fallen through the ice, maybe ice skating, was invented by someone here in South County? It is incredible. So I really hope that you come and join us. You'll be able to pick up one of the sleds that's made. It's really only about this big. It's for a little child. Or see one of the kick sleds that we have to go on the ice with someone sitting in it, similar to a stroller maybe. Come out and meet us, because we also have free hot chocolate, coffee, and tea for members. And if you're not a member, you can become a family member, and you'll get to experience a hot chocolate bomb. Now, if you don't know what that is, I'll describe it quickly. It's baked by Jessica in town. It's a chocolate bomb. It's circle like this. Think of a huge truffle. But when I pour that hot milk over the top for you, it will dissolve and burst open with marshmallow and chocolate mix. Trust me, it's worth becoming a member just for that. But the other activities we have coming up are a commercial fishing exhibit that will be opening in May, along with a speaker series. And that will be tied into the presentation that I will give in February, so I hope you all attend, talking about the changes in the salinity of the water of the Point Judith Refuge and how it affects the commercial fishermen's catch and commerce. So I'm really looking forward to seeing all of you then. Until then, feel free to watch us on Facebook if you're into that kind of thing. We have an active community of interest groups. We have over 6,000 people in the Facebook group Narragansett and South Kingstown Memories, where people share photos of the past. And we have over 1.5 thousand people involved in the commercial fishing interest group, where we're actively gathering information for the upcoming exhibit from the community members. And then we also have a South County Cousins Genealogy Club. We've been working with the library for quite a few months now. We love our genealogists, and if you join the Genealogy Club interest group, we'll be able to answer your questions and point you to research. So enjoy the conversation, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
Great. Thanks so much, Heather. Sounds like a lot of good things are going on. Great. So our next presentation will be from Laurie Kelly, who is the president of the trustees of the library. And so what's new at the library?
So first I want to say congratulations on 10 years, new year, but we're back to the same problem, is that we're completely sold out on these fantastic lectures. So we even online. So we will be looking at getting a larger Zoom conference setups to accommodate this and other things, because looks like the pandemic's going to go on for a while. I did want to thank Marilyn for making this possible, and I'm kind of stealing her speaker today, because I did want to talk to the group as thanking you all for the turnout for the election in November. We have a great council that now supports the building and the future of the library. And just a brief update, because we've been all getting a lot of questions as to what's going on. We do have an RFP out for the Belmont as of now. On the 3rd, 4 architectural firms will be returning their bids, and then we're going to be reading the applications and hopefully choosing an architectural firm in the next 4 to 6 weeks. I think sooner is better, but we have to do this in a measured manner. Now, after that, there will be a lot of public meetings. Of course, we're going to be asking for the expertise of the library staff, but also those of you who use the library for your thoughts and ideas on the library design. And, you know, the architects will be running that. So that's going to take a while before we actually get to the design, the final design, which we will be presenting to the community. So we are working, you know, as hard as we can behind the scenes. We're pushing to make, you know, it happen as quickly as possible, but we're going to try to keep you in the loop, because I know how frustrating it is, like what's going on. The other news is that the town is issuing the $2.8 million in bonds, which will be repaying the town coffers, which, you know, if you've been paying attention over the last few years, they said, oh, there's a hole in the budget, there's a hole in the budget. Within the next 30 days, the budget should be whole again. And then, you know, the bonds that's to pay ourselves back for purchasing the building. And then later on, they'll be issuing bonds for the outfitting of the library.
Plenty of time.
So that's just the update. Thank you so much for all that you do for the community. And this sounds like a wonderful event today. So I don't want to stay in the way and go on longer. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lori. And Marilyn, did you want to say something about the food collection?
Hi, I just wanted to mention that the Friends are having a food drive, and we're collecting food in the foyer of the library until February 6th. So far, it's been very successful. I've seen huge containers of food going out every day. And also, you know, this is a really hard time for a lot of people. So it's a good time to donate and remember people who might be choosing whether to feed or heat their homes, right? Feed their children or heat their homes. So thank you.
Thanks, Marilyn. Yeah, that's great. I appreciate that. Okay, next slide, David. So I want to put a plug in for the On Pettaquamscutt Winter Speaker Series. We have a web page where all the information about the 2021 presentations are, and you can now register there also for the next presentation, which is February 28th. And that button takes you to the library for the presentation also. Okay, next slide. So let's get on to our coastal defenses in Narragansett. Last year, at the March 2020 On Pettaquamscutt Winter Speaker Series, we wanted you to learn about the coastal defenses that are right in our midst in Narragansett, but we were canceled. So we decided to present it as the first speaker series this year. In 2015, Kathy Kelleher had researched and anchored a fact-filled brochure on Narragansett coastal defenses for the Narragansett Historical Society with production help from David Smith. The self-guided tour, which includes a map, was distributed for the Narragansett Parks and Recreation Gansett Days activities starting in 2017. It was a hit. You can find this guide on the Narragansett Historical Society webpage. That's Narragansett Historical Society in Rhode Island, not Massachusetts. In the last year, David and his sidekick have roamed these 7 coastal defenses looking for the best pictures. David Smith is involved in many not-for-profit organizations in Narragansett, but he's also the historian for the descendants of Stukely Westcott of America. So in the last year, he has honed his research skills and his presentation skills to present to you today a virtual field trip on the coastal defenses of Narragansett. So let's get on the Zoom bus and begin our tour. Again, if you have questions, place them in the chat section, which is located by hovering your cursor at the bottom of your screen, and we'll take a few of the questions at the end of the presentation. I would ask that everyone would mute themselves except for David Smith, and he'll go straight through his presentation. Thank you. David.
Thank you, Rosemary. You all set?
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary, and welcome everybody to this virtual tour. Let's go to our starting point. And it's, you're probably familiar with this concrete earth-covered structure that you can see from Point Judith Road or the Galilee Escape Road. It was built in the 1940s to house, service, and protect a massive piece of coastal artillery which had a range of more than 27 miles. The barrel of the 16-inch gun was 66 feet long and weighed more than a ton. And when fired, according to some locals, shattered windows in Narragansett and Wakefield. But wait a minute. Other people say the gun was never fired from here. Well, both accounts are true. Parts of the story of an evolving military technology and strategy in a remarkable building program during the war. To tell this story, we will follow a guide written by Kathy Kelleher of the Narragansett Historical Society for its annual Gansett Days celebration. Coastal Defenses of Narragansett is available from narragansetthistoricalsociety.com. .org will get you that one in Massachusetts. And there is a Narragansett in Massachusetts, but that's the topic for another talk. So narragansetthistorical.com or on Pettaquamscutt.com. In putting together the tour and this presentation, Kathy and I relied heavily on Walter Schroeder's Defenses of Narragansett Bay in World War II. It's a definitive compilation of data, images, and background information. And of course, no one dares talk about coastal defenses on Boston Neck without first consulting with Wayne Durfee. His annual walking tours of South Ferry are ever new and always informative. So let's head up to the north of Narragansett for our first stop, which is the Fort Kearny at the URI Bay campus on South Ferry Road. But the first order of business is to correct the place name. Wayne Durfee points out that the fort name was spelled Fort Kearny, K-E-A-R-N-Y, on all drawings and documents until sometime after World War II, when another E was added to the name, K-E-A-R-N-E-Y. But whatever its name, we're going to head on down to the fort. To get okay. Two curses, sorry. To get to, so we're going to head down to the Graduate School of Oceanography, and to get there, we're going to go on South Ferry Road, which was the first publicly accepted road in what is now the town of Narragansett. It was laid out at the beginning of the 18th century by brothers John and Jeremiah Smith of Prudence Island. The Smith boys bought the Boston Neck land from the family of Governor John Winthrop of Connecticut in 1692 and divided it into two 332-acre lots stretching from Narrow River on the west to Narragansett Bay on the east. The road follows the boundary between their lots, John to the north and Jeremiah to the south. And it provided a convenient route to a ferry service and a tavern operated by John and Jeremiah. In 1709, the Rhode Island colony enacted multiple regulations and fees for numerous ferries that were operating in Narragansett Bay, selling a license to the Smiths to operate the ferry from a dock on Jeremiah's lot to Josiah Arnold's dock on Jamestown, and a license to Arnold to operate the service from Jamestown to Smith's dock in Narragansett. The Smiths Ferry would have many different owners, part owners and operators over the next 7 decades. But the ferry and the ferry road were vital to the plantation economy of South County, as depicted in Ernest Hamlin's 1939 WPA mural, The Economic Activities of Narragansett Planters. This was put up in the Wakefield Post Office on Robinson Street in 1939. Not only did the ferry provide transportation to the markets, courts, and social life of Newport, but the ferry dock was a shipping point for livestock, cheeses, and other agricultural products bound for New York, the Chesapeake, and the Caribbean, and for the import of manufactured goods and, sadly, enslaved Africans. The local economy and the ferry landing was severely impacted by the Revolutionary War and the War of 1812. But in the mid-19th century, the advent of steam power enabled the Potter family to build a textile mill along the shore and take advantage of the dock for receiving raw materials and shipping finished goods. The mill became the anchor for multiple businesses and residences in what became known as Narragansett Village. But the same steam power also shifted the advantage to mills along the Stonington Railroad. And after the Civil War, the village was in steep decline. Today, all that remains of the village is the South Ferry Church at the top of the hill. In his first term, President Grover Cleveland appointed William Endicott to be his Secretary of War, and he directed Endicott to evaluate and modernize the defense infrastructure on the East Coast and the shores of the Great Lakes. The 1886 report of the Endicott Board recommended a far-reaching program of constructing concrete fortifications, mounting new long-range guns, and defending some 29 locations around the U.S. with submarine mines. In 1895, with Cleveland back in office, the recommendations were put into action, and that launched a period of construction and technological reform that lasted until 1906. It was a period that resulted in multiple fortified gun installations to protect Narragansett Bay, including at Fort Wetherall and Fort Getty on Jamestown and Fort Greville on Dutch Island. Installations manned by units of the newly formed 10th Coast Artillery stationed at Fort Adams in Newport. One of the technological breakthroughs was the disappearing gun. The gun was loaded and aimed while hidden behind the parapet, then raised into a firing position by a large counterweight. When fired, the recoil of the weapon lowered the gun below the protective wall, and it was ready to be reloaded. The most commonly deployed disappearing gun was the 6-inch M1900 gun, similar to the one in the photo. The disappearing 6-inch gun could fire a 90-pound round of armor-piercing or incendiary round 8¼ miles. Later models mounted on a barbette carriage had a range of 9.6 miles. The Endicott buildup came to Narragansett in 1901 when the War Department purchased 25 acres of the former mill village, including the dock, and started construction in 1905. The Army named the new installation Fort Kearny after Major Philip Kearny Jr. Although Kearny was independently wealthy, he chose a military career. He studied tactics in France, lost his arm as a result of a wound in the Mexican War. He returned to France to fight for Napoleon III and then rejoined the Union Army at the beginning of the Civil War. He was mortally wounded at the Battle of Chantilly. If you look at this drawing, which was first made in 1914 of the fort, but finally it was finally revised in 1921. You can see those oblong areas here. These are the gun emplacements along the hill. These structures right here along Ferry Road are the barracks for the enlisted. And down on the left, you see 4 dock structures. Those are the officers' quarters. The Army built emplacements for 3 gun batteries down shown here in an aerial photograph taken in 1939. The photography was taken to assess the damage from the 38 hurricane. And you'll note that those barracks buildings and the officers' quarters are no longer there, perhaps in due part to the storm. Note the location of the South Ferry Church in the upper right, the ferry road leading to the bay, and the dock on the right. This site offered several tactical advantages. Its elevation overlooking the West Passage and the mouth of Narragansett Bay, pairing with guns at Fort Getty to prevent warships from entering the bay, and a dock to service fortifications on Jamestown and Dutch Island from the mainland without worrying about tolls on the Jamestown Bridge. 4 6-inch disappearing guns were installed in Battery French at the top of the hill, and 2 more at Battery Cram, all set to interdict warships should they approach the bay. Battery Armistead, the one in the north, consisted of 2 3-inch guns installed to protect against minesweepers and other small craft. A concrete, earth-covered magazine was built between each pair of gun positions for a mapping room and storage for projectiles, powder bags, and fuses. After World War II, laboratory facilities were built onto the magazine structures between the gun positions of Battery Cram and Battery Armistead. And later, the Rhode Island Nuclear Science Center was built on top of Battery French. Portions of these 3 structures are visible and some are accessible today. So let's see what we can see of those gun emplacements. So you take South Ferry Road, and at the main entrance to the campus, take a right, and then take a left onto Fish Road. The Rhode Island Nuclear Science Center is to the right of Fish Road. The reactor is that large white cube. The facility is built on the top of Battery French. Gun position 4 is visible to the north side of the facility, and gun position 1 is partially exposed on the south end. I don't recommend climbing on either. At the end of Fish Road, there are paths to the crest to the hill, overlooking Battery Cram on the right and Battery Armistead to the left. Each has a staircase that you can go down for a closer look and a good cardio workout. You can view them from above or descend the staircase to Battery Lane and climb to the semicircular gun positions of each of these batteries. But be careful, this is not an ADA compliant site. This is gun position 1 on Battery Cram. Note the height of the wall behind which the gun would disappear when fired. In the photo, there is a convenient 6-foot unit of measure standing on the front lip of the emplacement. Since the gun has already been removed, we need to go to Battery Chamberlain at the Presidio in San Francisco to see how the gun was loaded and fired. Oh. Okay, this is an artillery unit from the National Park Service. And they're a little slow in showing up, but they can load a gun. By the numbers.
Back 2 with the scoop. 3 and 4. Let's see, Michelle. 5 with the rammer. All the way in. To the US.
He's a new recruit.
Perfect. Going back.
Take a look at the size of that gunpowder bag. Okay, now the leader's going to crank a switch, and then the counterweight takes over, and here comes the gun.
And of course, ear splitting. The whole round shook here. We have photos and silent movies, but they don't describe the sound. You know, ear damage was common with Coast Artillery soldiers, and of course, the movement of the gun right back to where it was, and we're reloading, so we could fire 2 rounds a minute. Not we, 13 men, more men bringing out more gunpowder and so on. So it was actually about a 25-man crew per gun. Wow.
Now, the other thing to point out in terms of the way these things work was that although it was possible to point it directly at a target, like you would aim and fire a rifle, generally guns of this caliber and the bigger ones were used indirect fire.
Indirect fire will be on the exam.
Aim them by, they cranked the dials until they were on a certain range and azimuth or compass bearing. They got the information phoned into a battery plotting room, and they used trigonometry to calculate the proper angles. And they got the information from what were called base end stations or fire control stations, which were spread up and down the coast for miles and miles. And this allowed them to what they call triangulate the position. It was more accurate, and it also provided what you would call redundancy or survivability. So generally, these were indirect fire weapons.
Okay. All right. Fort Kearny was activated for World War I, but there was no action in the Bay or on the Rhode Island Sound. By the time the US had entered the war, the large warships of the German Navy had already duked it out with the British Navy in the North Sea, and the war was increasingly concentrated on the Western Front. But not only were the 6-inch guns not needed in Narragansett Bay, they were obsolete. As Fort Kearny was being built, the navies of the major nations were arming their warships with 15 and 16-inch guns that could fire on Rhode Island coast from positions well outside of the range of Fort Kearny's 6-inch guns. The US was involved in this arms race, manufacturing 16-inch guns in Philadelphia for its Navy. A treaty ended that program in 1922, but left an inventory of big gun barrels. In 1917, the 4 6-inch guns of Battery French were removed, reconfigured as field pieces, and 3 of them were sent to France, along with similar weapons removed from other coastal emplacements. The structure of Battery Armistead is appropriately much smaller. The battery included 2 3-inch guns. The photo on the lower right is an M1903 3-inch Seacoast gun. After the war, Kearny was deactivated, and many of the temporary structures, such as barracks, were removed. But the 2 3-inch guns of Battery Armistead and the 2 obsolete 6-inch disappearing guns of Battery Cram remained. When Fort Kearny was activated for World War II, its mission focused on the protection of the West Passage, while newer and bigger guns were deployed at Fort Greene, which was under construction on Point Judith. This 1951 aerial photograph shows the 3 battery positions. It also shows barracks and other structures built to garrison units of the 243rd Coast Artillery. Barracks are the 4 oblong rectangular pieces in a row along Ferry Road in the upper portion of the picture. The inset photo is one of these, quote, temporary barracks in 1942. During World War II, the 3-inch guns of Battery Armistead were replaced with 37mm anti-motor torpedo boat guns. The mission of this battery was to protect a submarine net suspended from an anti-boat boom across West Passage from Fort Kearny to Fort Getty. The net was part of harbor defenses strategy that also included an anti-boat boom and net in the East Passage, and hydrophones and magnetic cables deployed to the south for detection of incoming ships. The boom closed all traffic in the West Passage from February 1942 to September 1944. What remains of the boom is this concrete block that anchored the net at Fort Kearny. It is just south of the dock on the beach. We could not confirm that a structure we found on Jamestown was the comparable anchor on the east end of the boom. Fort Kearny had one more change of mission when it was converted to a prisoner of war camp, at which a select group of POWs produced Der Ruf, a German language newspaper that was distributed to POW camps throughout the US. It's a fascinating story that you can find at littlestatebighistory.com. After the war, the property was acquired by the University of Rhode Island, which repurposed those barracks into housing. Fort Kearny is now the URI campus of the Graduate School of Oceanography. And that is yet another story, but let's move on to the next stop on our tour. Head south on Boston Neck Road. Turn left into Bonnet Shores. And when you come into the fork in the road, take it. Either road will lead you to Colonel John Gardner Road, where you're about halfway along the road, stop at the open field across from 251 Colonel John Gardner Road. A marker on a large rock on the roadside identifies Bonnet Battery. Across an open field, you can see the remains of the earthen fortification constructed by colonists in 1776 in anticipation of British forays into Narragansett Bay. The burn near the edge of the cliff is what is left of what was probably a much larger fortification. The Canonchet Battery, across the water on Jamestown, was built about the same time and had several cannon. On December 7th, 1776, 16 British ships of war, leading a convoy of transports and carrying regulars and mercenaries, entered the West Passage, sailed around the north end of Jamestown, and landed at Newport. I cannot find any account of the fleet taking fire from either Bonnet Battery or Canonchet Battery. And you can imagine the colonials experienced the 18th century version of shock and awe, seeing 16 ships of line, and they abandoned their positions. The roadside DAR marker at Bonnet Battery says that the colonials regained possession of the battery from the British in 1778. Twice since this time the fortification has been rebuilt and occupied. During the War of 1812, a battery was located here. And during the Civil War, when it was reported that the Confederate cruiser Alabama was off the coast, it was strengthened again, and an artillery company stayed there for a few weeks. The battery is owned by the Bonnet Shores Land Trust. The next stop is not as easy to access as Bonnet Battery. Camp Varnum is an active and secured National Guard facility, as evidenced by the front gate and a 7-foot fence on its perimeter. But you can access the shoreline from the north using a Nature Conservancy trail and walk the perimeter. Camp Varnum is in the southeast corner of Boston Neck, a bit to the north of the mouth of Narrow River. To access the trail, look for either of the two Camp Varnum signs on Boston Neck Road, north of the Sprague Bridge, and turn onto Old Boston Neck Road. After about a third of a mile, you will see signs warning you not to enter Cormorant Road. But a dirt road to the left of those signs leads to a parking area for the Nature Conservancy's Whale Rock Preserve. And there is a trailhead there for a 15-minute walk to the shoreline and Camp Varnum. It can be something of a difficult walk, so don't wear flip-flops. This area was, before World War II, this area was best known for the remains of the Whale Rock Lighthouse, a little less than a half a mile from shore. The light was built in 1882. On September 21, 1938, Whale Rock's keeper Daniel Sullivan went ashore to get some supplies, leaving his assistant Walter Eberly in charge. While Sullivan was ashore, the 1938 hurricane showed up and prevented him from returning to the light. Waves battered the light and washed the upper portion of the light off its pedestal, and with it, assistant keeper Eberly. His body was never found. The Army acquired the property in February 1942 to build an encampment for units of the 243rd Coast Artillery and of units of the 10th Coast Artillery to bolster harbor defenses. The new fort was named for General James Mitchell Varnum, a founder of the Kentish Guards and a leader who was not intimidated by massive British forces encamped on Aquidneck and Canonchet Islands. Construction began in the spring, but the resulting structure looked nothing like the rectangular rows of barracks built at Fort Kearny. Rather, the camp is disguised as a small coastal village with variations on an architectural style that conveniently includes widow's watches and a row of windows high on the second floor. 4 of these blue, red, yellow, and gray cottages are actually concrete structures that provide fire control points for 16-inch guns that were to be deployed at Fort Church on Saconnet Point and at Fort Greene in Point Judith, and to multiple batteries of smaller guns at Church, Greene, and other forts. Through those second floor windows, 2 observers would take simultaneous bearings to the target. They would shoot an azimuth, as they say in the Army, using bearing telescopes. The 2 angles and the known distance between the 2 telescopes were used to resolve the location of the target. Triangulation, as was described in the video. Successive simultaneous bearings determine the direction and speed of the target. The azimuth telescope was sometimes mounted on a tripod, as shown in the picture on the left, or on a pole. In many control stations, there was a geodesic marker or benchmark below the scope. On the inside, there are guides such as signal flags, as the signal flags in the picture on the right, painted above the window. I ran out of film before getting pictures of the rest of the alphabet and the profiles of vessels that would likely appear in Narragansett Bay. Fort Varnum was also armed. Like Fort Kearny, it had an anti-motor torpedo boat battery consisting of 90mm and 37mm rifles, supported by an earth-covered magazine and fire control station. Remnants of the gun mounts can be seen along the fence at the north end of the fort. Battery House, which consisted of 2 6-inch rapid-fire guns, was moved from Fort Getty and positioned in the southern corner of Fort Varnum. These guns were taken over the Jamestown Bridge. These shielded guns were placed on circular mounts near the water's edge and in front of an earth-covered fire control and magazine bunker. I don't know if this installation was ever mistaken for features of a typical New England seacoast village. On September 14, 1944, an approaching hurricane forced evacuation of the fort, which showed up the next day and washed one of the 6-inch gun off its mount, as shown in this photo from Walter Schroeder's book. The troops returned the next day and restored the gun to its rightful place. After the war, the post was turned over to the Rhode Island National Guard, and the mission of the 243rd changed from coast artillery and harbor defense to providing a regional training center at Camp Varnum. In addition to military training, the site is also used for state and local police training. The National Guard has done a remarkable job maintaining the exterior of these. What? Yeah, okay. Oh, there we go. The National Guard has done a remarkable job maintaining the exterior of these buildings while keeping the look and feel of the coastal village. At this, oh my God. The building on the lower right is the last structure to be restored. That work was interrupted in 2012 by Superstorm Sandy, which caused a lot of other repair work. The final stop on the tour are multiple locations in Point Judith where the Army planned gun installations to defend the coast and the bay from large warships. These installations comprise the new Fort Nathaniel Greene, which would feature 2 batteries, each with a pair of 16-inch guns. Fort Greene would match a similar installation at Fort Church at Secana Point. Together, these batteries could protect the waters off Rhode Island from Buzzards Bay to the east to the entry to Long Island Sound to the west. Before anything was constructed on these reservations, the Army made use of another Narragansett landmark, Kinney Bungalow on Sunset Farm. Kinney Bungalow was built by Francis Kinney in 1899 as a private clubhouse for parties after polo games across the way. During World War II, it was used by the Red Cross. And during World War I, it was used by the Red Cross. And during World War II, by the US Army as a communication post for Fort Nathaniel Greene. Fort Greene consisted of 3 parcels of land or reservations. The fort's east reservation is the current-day Fort Greene, a secured Army Reserve Center between Point Judith Road and Ocean Road. There is no public access to this location. In fact, the keep out signs include the warning, "Deadly force is authorized." Fort Greene West Reservation is across Point Judith Road and is now Fisherman's Memorial Campground, operated by the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management. And finally, the South Reservation was a 34-acre parcel between the Point Judith Lake to the southeast and the Harbor of Refuge to the west. It is now the Camp Cronin Fishing Area, another DEM facility. Acquisition of these 3 parcels began in 1939. One of the 16-inch guns batteries, Battery 109, was to be built on the West Reservation. To see the 2 emplacements for Battery 109, follow from Kinney Bungalow, drive south on Point Judith Road for about 2 miles to the entrance of the Fisherman's Memorial State Campground on the right, just before the escape road. We should note that access to the grounds for non-campers is limited during the camping season, April 10th through October 31st. But during the off-season, it's a wonderful place to walk. And if you're up to it, do some climbing. To get an idea of the size of the guns planned for Battery 109, take a look at these photos of a 16-inch gun. The photo on the left is an M1919 placed near Nantasket Beach in Massachusetts. The barrel is over 66 feet long. The gun in the carriage weighed 484 tons. It was capable of firing a 2,300-pound armor-piercing round 27 miles with accuracy. The photo on the right of the sergeant standing next to the muzzle of a 16-inch gun was taken at Fort Story, Virginia in 1945. Note the grooves machined into the bore of the gun. This rifling gave greater stability to the round as it made its way to the target. Of course, a big gun is a big target. So unlike the gun at Fort Duval at Nantasket Beach, almost all of the 16-inch gun emplacements that were part of World War II modernization program were encased in a concrete structure similar to the 2 built on Fort Greene's West Reservation. Each is 80 feet high and 400 feet long. The structure, the first structure is just beyond a small parking area to the left of the campground entrance. The inset photo is from a completely different place, as this casement and the second one next to it that comprised Battery 109 were never completed. No guns were fired from this location is a true statement because guns were never installed. The guns were to be mounted on barbette carriages so they could be rolled out into the open, elevated, and fired. What was not exposed were rooms inside the casements to store up to 100 rounds of ammunition, motorized equipment to load the 2,300-pound round into the gun, and most dangerous of all, about 600 pounds of powder needed for 100 volleys. The photo on the left shows an entrance to the back of the mound. On the right is a side view of the second encasement, with that convenient unit of measure walking down below in front of the structure. Just as Camp Varnum had its seacoast village disguise, the support buildings on the West Reservation were built to resemble a farm. 4 of them remain today and are visible as you enter the campground. There's a concrete fire control tower shown on the left, was designed to look like a silo. The photo on the right is a 1.5-story wood shingled gambrel roof barn that was actually an ordnance repair shop. There's also a 1-story shingled ordnance material and supply warehouse and a 1-story shop used for motor repair. The DEM uses these buildings today for maintenance of the campground. A separate earth-covered magazine was constructed at the far end of the reservation near the salt marsh. It is now surrounded by campsites and topped with an observation platform which offers a magnificent view of the coast and Block Island. As I said, the campground is a great place to walk during the off-season. The platform is about a half a mile from the silo and the barn. Battery 109 was never finished, but Battery 108, with 2 6-inch guns, each encased in an earth-covered concrete structure, was completed on the East Reservation across Point Judith Road. Construction on Battery 108 began in 1941, and it was renamed Battery Hamilton when it was armed and manned by a detachment of the 243rd Coast Artillery in 1943. This battery was not named after Alexander Hamilton. That honor was given to him more than 100 years earlier with fortifications built on Rose Island and Newport Harbor. Battery 108 was named for General Ashton Hamilton, whose long military career included commanding artillery units in France during World War I. And I can only imagine he may have used one of those guns from Fort Kearny. In August 1943, 3 practice rounds were fired from the guns of Battery Hamilton. And yes, they shattered a few windows in Wakefield. This 1951 aerial photograph shows Battery Hamilton on the right and Battery 109 on the left. You can also see the location of the magazine near the salt marsh and the silo and barn at the entrance of the campground. Numerous fire control stations were built on all 3 of the reservations of Fort Greene. One example is this base end station just off Ocean Road, south of Scarborough and the treatment facility. Base does not refer to Fort Greene. Greene was not a base, it was a fort, and base is a Navy term. Rather, the base is the distance between the 2 structures, which form the base of the triangle, and bearings or azimuths to the target from each structure form the other 2 sides. Resolving the position of the target and the direction and elevation of the gun is simply the trigonometry that we have all forgot. Our final stop is the Fort Greene South Reservation at Camp Cronin Fishing Area. Take Point Judith Road south past Aunt Carrie's and head towards the Point Judith Lighthouse. The entrance to Camp Cronin Fishing Area will be on the right. Slowly negotiate the potholes on the gravel road until you get into the parking lot. It's also made of gravel. On the left side of the gravel area is a large mound that was once an earth-covered magazine for 2 6-inch guns. There was a variety of other smaller weapons deployed at this site, which was constructed in 1941 and 42. The remnants of the entrance to the magazine are visible at various places on the base of the mound, as are concrete pads where guns were installed. The Point Judith Fisherman's Memorial is on top of the mound. Take a stairway to the top of the mound and stand at or near the compass in the center of the memorial and enjoy this view of this Point Judith Lighthouse. Now turn to the opposite direction. Just turn in the opposite direction and see another fire control point. It's in bad state of repair now. It was once clad in wood and painted to look like a good-sized summer cottage. Thankfully, the guns of Fort Greene never had to be fired. The real threat to the coast in World War II did not come from large battleships, but from German U-boats, which were best detected by shipboard sonar and aircraft. In May 1945, U-853 made its way into the waters off Point Judith and sank the coal ship Black Point. And while the South Reservation was on high alert, U-853 was tracked by multiple aircraft and ships, and it was sunk with depth charges from the USS Moberly on May 6th. It was almost 170 years since Rhode Island Governor Nicholas Cook wrote to General George Washington, "Sir, it is with great concern I give you the disagreeable intelligence that the enemy with a fleet consisting of 78 ships of war and transports entered the harbor of Newport yesterday. Since then, we have been blessed with thorough planning, some courageous action, and good luck, and it gives us hope." Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much, David. We found this hope symbol when we went to take some recent pictures at the Camp Cronin grounds. It's just a beautiful sight to see. Someone put that together. Whoever did it, thank you so much. David, I really appreciate all you've done to put this together. I have a really good question from South, and the question is, where can I find and print the map that you used on the left-hand side of the slides at the beginning?
That map is part of the guide.
Right. So
So if you go to either the website for the Narragansett Historical Society, that's narragansetthistoricalsociety.com. There'll be a link on the first page where you can download the guide, which has that map on it. And the map is used, it's numbered to point out various the locations. The map is actually a clip from a road map.
a David Smith production then, yeah. But it is accessible at the Narragansett Historical Society's webpage, right?
And it's also available on Pettaquamscutt.org. You have to scroll down to where this talk was discussed.
Okay.
And there's a link there.
Good. Well, David, you've been talking for a long time, so we just appreciate all that you've done. And I just want to remind folks that we have another presentation on February 28th, and it's Heather Kisilywicz, Stories of the South County Fishermen. And I'm looking forward to that. And then on March 28th, Craig Wood will be doing the Ospreys of Narrow River. And another wonderful presentation, because I loved watching the pictures of the Ospreys this summer. So I just want to remind our participants that TRIO is our supporter, and we hope that you'll get a chance to either dine in or take out from TRIO. And many thanks to Marilyn Sherman and the library and for hosting this Zoom, and for our presenters and the partners from our organizations. So hope to see you soon. Thanks so much. Bye-bye now.
I just want to address one last question. Someone
Sure.
asked about the recording, and I tried to record it, so hopefully, yes, it will be available on Pettaquamscutt.
Okay.
All right, so cross our fingers. Thanks for everybody for coming. It was great.
We have a practice video that we might.
We have a
get,
backup if it's.
But I need an editor for that. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.